Welcome to the Sit Down. Joining me today is our mayor, Dan Pope. Mr. Mayor, thank you so much for being here.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I want to start by sort of talking about your journey to Lubbock, maybe a little bit of your upbringing and then how you finally got out here, and then what sort of made you jump in and want to be in government here in the city of Lubbock.
So I first of all, I appreciate the time to share with you today. I'm from a Red Raider family. My parents met at Tech in the 50s. My mom was a West Texas rancher's daughter, and my dad was a first-generation college student from Central Texas. And so I'm one of three boys, and my dad always joked that we could go to anywhere, schooling where we want to, but he was only paying for it if we went to Tech. So we all became Red Raiders, and so I came here in the early 80s and spent, I crammed a lot of fun into 4 years, and went to work for Xerox Corporation in 1985, spent nearly a decade with Xerox in sales management roles. And then in 1994 came back to Lubbock, brought my Longhorn wife with me, and we started a business in Lubbock in 94, operated it for about 20 years, sold it a few years ago. And you know, I've always had, I've put together to serve. I couldn't teach school. I don't have the patience for that. I'm not smart enough to be a physician, certainly. But I spent 9 years on the Lubbock School Board, and when Mayor Robertson decided to run for Congress, I looked at it and said, I'd always thought that, and I still believe that Lubbockites spend too much time apologizing for Lubbock. Lubbock is a great place to live. It's a great place to work. It's a great place to play. It's a great, wonderful place to raise a family. Sure. The quality of life is really off the chart in a lot of ways, and so it's in some ways I'm paying my civic rent, I guess. The community's been very good to us, and it's not something I woke up dreaming of as a fourth grader.
Sure, it's been good to me too. I've been here since 2011, and in that short period of time, you've been one of the more progressive mayors as far as your use of social media. How has that tool benefited you, or how do you see that as a tool for you as the mayor?
Well, I had a Facebook account prior to this, but it was not very active. Mainly because my kids had Facebook accounts, and I used Twitter just to follow the news but I've actually had to curtail my use of Twitter just because certainly I'm not like President Trump. That's not my style, but it's so addictive. You can just
Sure.
be on, watch your Twitter feed all day long, but I think it's a great way to communicate. I think when I talk to citizens, young, old, black, white, brown, they want to know what's going on. They feel like we should be transparent. We're spending all of our money. It's when you think about it that way, we need to spend money at City Hall like we spend money from our own checkbook at our house. And so you talk about decisions you're making and why you feel a certain way. You know that people aren't always going to agree with you, but I think if you can lay out a logical approach to your decision-making approach, and I think, I try to mix it with common sense. I think that's we were talking a little bit off before we started about West Texans.
Sure.
This is not it's not a fluffy part of the world. Yeah. It's still pretty hard scrabble, fiercely independent people, and they may not they may not agree with you, but I found they'll generally respect you if you'll explain why you feel a certain way.
Sure. You've had an eye to the future. Like you said, that's one reason why you got involved in government here. One thing that you did, you recently had an event, the first ever Mayor's Marathon that went around the Loop. I'd always heard, it was like an urban legend when I moved here, that the Loop was exactly like a marathon links around it. Yeah. And it's pretty darn close. It is. How do events like that, and how did that event, how does it benefit the city? How do you see events like that sort of building the profile of Lubbock?
Well, so let's talk about that part first,
Sure.
And then I want to go back and talk a little bit about the event. It's about, first of all, creating an opportunity for our citizens to get involved and to get active. That's the whole idea. And then, but it draws people to our community. People, first of all, they think about a marathon in Lubbock. They think, well, it's pretty flat, it'd be a good time, good qualifiers. We certified it, so it was a Boston qualifier, which was important. Yeah. We had 1,100 people, more than 1,100 people show up for the first marathon. So
good weather that day
we
too.
Had
I was watching people's Instagram feed, and I didn't do it this year. I wanted to, but I was like, a perfect
we had
day.
remarkable weather. I think we, because if you remember, we had a late, spring was late getting here. We had some very cold weekends, and so, no, we were blessed with great weather. Next year we'll do it on the fourth Sunday in April.
Okay.
So the third Sunday is Easter next year. We'll sign you up.
Right.
So we can't do it on Easter Sunday, but we'll do it on the Sunday following. And it's interesting in how this happened. It was I like this idea of a fitness council. Mayor Betsy Price in Fort Worth she calls it FitWorth. If you look around the country, you find a number of mayors that have done these efforts to get them outside and be active. And I'm a big believer in that. And so we have a fitness council that, thank goodness, that the Chamber and the Health Science Center, Ted Mitchell and his team, Eddie McBride, and sort of the Imagine Lubbock effort a few years ago, they asked me soon after I was elected if I'd be interested in helping get this thing off the ground. And so a group of citizens forms this Mayor's Fitness Council. And I come to meetings some, but they run it. It's their deal. And we've gone out and got some sponsors, and they want to have a big splashy first event. And they say we want to have a marathon. And I said, okay. And they said, and we will run around the loop. And I said, okay, that's a little more challenging, but we'll go see TxDOT. And they said, we want to call it the Mayor's Marathon. I was like, wait, can we come up with a better name? But anyway, it was, I give them the credit. The United Supermarkets was our underwriter. They did a great job. It was cool to have, Dean Carenzis here this year. He put a big stamp of, the ultra marathoner. And he was just so gracious and did an event on Saturday. And he ran on. There was a marathoner that came here from Fort Sill in Oklahoma. Okay. He's in the service, and he tried to get here on Saturday in time for the meet and greet with Paul to get his book, to get his book signed. And he couldn't get here because he had exercises that morning. And so during the race itself, he looks up and realizes that Dean is running right in front of him. Oh. And they run the last 6 or 7 miles of the race together. And this guy was sharing this with my wife after the race, and it was a cool day. It's transformative when you can get people to, for some people it's the first time they've ever run an event,
Sure.
And it's like a lifelong goal, and it was a great way to celebrate our community.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Speaking of growth, I think we're projected by 2020 to be over 320,000 people, and that is going to create a lot of expanse as we're already. Every time I drive down Milwaukee, there's a new something going on. Yeah. Could you talk a little bit about the 2040 land use plan and how that addresses this growth?
Yeah, so the growth you're talking about, that's going to be the county.
County.
So the city's about 250. Yes. We got numbers a year ago. We were at 254 and change. But the county should be a little more than 320. They think TxDOT and other demographers feel like that by 2045, 2050 will be more than 400,000. So
is that county or that
that'd
city?
Be a county.
Okay.
But remember, the city's makes up about 85% of that. So so the 2040 plan is the citizens. Planning group that's doing that will actually bring us our plan later this year. It's really two things. The land use plan that guides development. So it's new development, it's redevelopment, it's parks, it's what retail looks like, it's what mixed use looks like. The other thing they'll do is they'll update our city plan. Since the 1940s, about every 10 years, we've had a plan. In fact, in 1970, when the tornado hit, we were able to pull a plan off the table or off the shelf. It's remarkable how many things that were in that plan that were done in the next decade. We've not updated that in 20 years. It seems like you need a bit of time to dream and to talk about what we do well today, what we could do better in the future, what our needs are going to be. So that's the effort. It's citizen led. There's 30 some odd citizens. John Zwiker and Beth Bridges are the chair and co-chair of that. They've done a really good job, and there'll be some public hearings this fall, so people will be able to learn more about, to be able to see it and provide final comment. As it stands now, we will consider adopting it in December of this year.
Okay, yeah, and that was one of my questions
Yeah.
coming up. There has been some criticism of the plan. The East Lubbock Neighborhood Association, they released a public comment, and I'll just read from it now so our viewers can know sort of what their concerns are. They said, after reviewing the presentations provided by the consultant for the project, the Alliance fears the vital issues of equity, infrastructure, and environmental health will not be properly addressed. East Lubbock faces many challenges. It's surrounded by industry, suffers from a shortage of public and private investment, and lacks sufficient public transit. How do you address those concerns of the neighborhoods of East Lubbock?
Yeah, so first of all, the process has been very open, and I was a little concerned to not get this feedback until this late in the process.
When did that come?
I received it. It was dated 4th of July week.
Okay.
So it's brand new. In fact, this organization doesn't really even exist. I guess maybe they came together just for this, but there's really no. So we need to have some discussions.
Sure.
I mean, certainly some of the things they've mentioned should be in the plan and will be in the plan. Others probably won't be. I don't know that it's probably outside the scope of what we're looking at.
Yeah.
I appreciate their input. We want people involved in the process. Public transit, let's just take that one. That's it.
Yeah, I have some follow-up questions on that because, as we grow and expand, public transit's got to be squeezed. How do you plan for that?
We've got to find a better way of doing public transit.
Yeah.
I mean, we're watching pretty closely what Arlington has done. You may have noticed, but Arlington, Texas, only didn't have public transit for many years and has gone to a more of a Uber kind of model of public transit. Smaller vehicles, more on call. We're a huge city geographically, to be just 250,000 people.
Sure.
I
call it New Lubbock when I get past 98th Street.
We have a difficult time meeting the public transportation needs and doing it in a way that's fiscally responsible. We subsidize it considerably today, which is okay. I mean, there's other things we subsidize. We certainly subsidize parks, but I think we've got to think differently when it comes to public transportation going forward, and I do think that we're studying both updating a bike plan and a pedestrian mobility plan that hadn't been done in 20 years. We'll see that work late this year, early next year. But we have to recognize that transportation is not as it's always been, and I think it will change. And you'll see us. We're working closely with tech around bike sharing, and I think you'll see a bike share plan here within the next year. So maybe in 6 months. But the public transit, as we think about it today, transportation. So I think it'll continue to be a challenge for city leaders.
And another one of those ideas that they had, how do we encourage, like I said, I've been here since 2011, and East Lubbock does in some ways feel sort of blocked off. It's harder to get to, all of those types of things. There's not as much public infrastructure, private investment. How do you engage that and encourage those types of things to grow in that part of the city? And I know the city can't grow in all directions at once, but East Lubbock just historically has sort of been, it's sort of blocked off. How do we open up those channels of not only just transportation, but also public and private investment, and to really bring their voices into the larger conversation?
Yeah, so I think we'll start with their voices. Their voices are very important.
Absolutely.
I think I enjoy going. I have a coffee with the mayor every month. I go every 7 months. When I move them from district, city, or 6 months, from council district to council district. I enjoy going to East Lubbock for my coffee over there. My time on the school board, I spent a ton of time in East Lubbock. I was a big part of the decision to close some schools and to build Irvin Elementary School. That was not an easy decision, but I think it was the right decision. I think the neighborhood looks back at that and says that was the right kind of investment. We've got to. My opinion is it's not the city's job to develop East Lubbock. We need to create an environment where it's attractive to people who want to invest. I talked to a bank president or financial institution president last week who's interested in a branch in East Lubbock. I think that's a big deal. We have a branch. One of our banks has a branch in North Lubbock, but otherwise we don't have financial institutions. We need those in North and East Lubbock. One of the things that I believe we must capitalize on is the Canyon Lakes. I'm pleased that there's a Friends of the Canyon Lakes organization that's been founded. It's when the Chamber did their Imagine Lubbock efforts 5 or 6 years ago, the Canyon Lakes scored off the chart as to how important it was to citizens and how they wanted that to be featured more in as a community asset, a jewel of our community. And so, the bike path that we did down from the Tech campus down Broadway, underneath the interstate, goes all the way to Martin Luther King. It gets you to the park. So if you can, from the Tech campus, certainly if you know how to navigate your way through the western part of the Tech campus from Quaker or Rush, you can go all the way to the Canyon Lakes. That's a first step. We've got to get people enjoying East Lubbock more. I think that will help open the eyes to our community. It's the prettiest part of our community, and I think over time there's a bright future. Here's what I've seen in other cities. Let's take Austin as an example. When I lived in Austin in the late '80s, the interstate divided Austin and East Austin. You only went across to eat Mexican breakfast at Cisco's, or maybe to grab a plate of Mexican food somewhere else, or to go to the airport, the old airport. Today, it's the hottest part of the community. Downtown redevelopment will have a big impact on North and East Lubbock. That's one of the reasons that it's important to our community. It's one of a number of reasons, but as more people live and work and play downtown, East Lubbock becomes attractive because it's a lot closer to that, and so that's part of the solution too, I believe.
Yeah, absolutely. Another big future thing is LP&L and ERCOT joining that system. Yeah. I think we're set to join it by 2021 was the initial date. What's an update on that? Where are we with that?
So we're still shooting for that June 1, 2021 would be the cutover date. That's the date that the Public Utility Commission has agreed to and ERCOT has agreed to. We've right now after getting the approval, we're now working to connect ourselves to the ERCOT grid. So it's a physical connection. We got to build the wires to connect us and be able to handle their power. And so will be a couple connections, and we are within the next month probably will reach an agreement with a partner that we will build those transmission lines together. At the same time, we're working on implementing advanced metering. So you've got to have advanced metering to be part of ERCOT, and that is the smart meters. That's which is a much better way to run the railroad anyway. South Plains Electric Co-op has been doing that for more than 20 years. Many Lubbock residents get their power from SPEC because of their territorial area. So that's what we're working on. There's a lot to be done. Most of our investment with LP&L is upgrading our physical plant, our infrastructure. For years we had competition in the alleys for 93 years. You could either be a XL or SPS customer or LP&L customer. So 10 years ago when the city bought the XL's assets, we all of a sudden had all the electric transmission, but we realized that we had two rather shabby, maybe crappy physical plants, assets. And so there's a lot of upgrade that needs to be done to that. And I think we're starting to improve reliability. A lot of this is about reliability. It's about making sure that you can, when you turn that light switch on, you've got reliable, affordable power.
How does it benefit the average LP&L customer? What would me as someone who's with LP&L now? What am I going to see 2021? What's going to? I
think a couple big things. One is that the ERCOT grid is less expensive than where we're buying power today. Okay. We think it'll be. Looking forward, we think it's 6 to 10% less expensive than where we are today. ERCOT. It's interesting. We're filming this right in the middle of the summer. The ERCOT, the overall grid is being tested this summer because of the fact that they've taken There's, I think, 3 or 4 coal plants that have been mothballed this year. There's quite a bit of wind energy, solar, and natural gas that will be coming onto ERCOT in the next couple of years. The complement of energy is completely different. You'll be able to, from your PC or your phone, go to powertochoose.org and shop for energy. So if you live in Abilene today, you punch in your zip code, and you might want to buy all green energy.
Yeah.
Or you may want all wind, or you might want all solar, or you might want solar at night. You may want to buy a cheaper energy or more expensive energy at night when you don't use quite as much power. You have complete ability to shop your electricity, much like you would shop for groceries today, or where you buy gas, or where you buy tennis shoes.
And solar, those renewable sources, for whatever reason, sometimes they fall into the political spectrum and people argue about them. Texas, though, has been very progressive as far as wind, as far as solar. How do you spread the gospel of renewable energy here in West Texas, where sometimes people don't want to see those changes happen? Solar, wind, how do we really push that through and get people to adopt those as sustainable, renewable sources of energy?
Well, certainly think we're there with wind already. I mean,
sure.
we count on wind.
We feel it all.
Yeah, and it's free.
Yeah.
It makes up about 15% of our energy today. It's one of the reasons that we're attractive to ERCOT. They want more ways to get that wind energy to the grid, and electricity is less expensive, out here because it's so close to where that wind and solar is being produced. I think probably the thing that helps wind and solar energy the most is as it becomes as it stands on its own a bit better,
sure.
As it doesn't require the tax breaks, the incentives, but think about it. Over the years, the government has often provided incentives to allow industry to come up to curve, where it's sustainable, and
sure.
So there's the wind generation is evident. There's a lot of solar development at different phases today. We hear a lot of those discussions, and battery technology will have a big impact on those technologies being more affordable, and we're gaining on that every day too. I think you just talk about the facts. Things change. I mean, I'll give you a good example. There's a big coal plant that SPS owns, that XL Energy owns. It's called the Tolk plant, T-O-L-K, just outside of Muleshoe. So if you're going up Clovis Highway, right before you get to Muleshoe, you see it up it's just north of the road. They've notified us that they're going to mothball it. They're going to early, and that's still probably a decade away. Yeah. But this is somebody that owns that resource, that's got readily available coal, that looks at the marketplace and says it makes more sense to, whether it's natural gas, or in their case, most of their investments today are in wind. I think generally the economics of it is what drive those big decisions. These are companies that have shareholders, and they have to deliver a return on their investment.
Sure. What are some of the biggest challenges you see the city facing in the next 20, 30 years? Where are we going to run into issues? What are things that citizens, government need to be thinking about to prepare for the future?
Well, I think the first thing we've got to work on is jobs. We need more good jobs. And when I'm talking about a good job, I'm talking a job that a new college graduate would aspire to. That's not all of our jobs. It's probably,
sure.
Only about 30% of our workforce or the jobs in our workforce are going to require a college degree. But we need to create those kind of jobs. Those jobs have a tendency to create other jobs. But I was asked a year ago, or a little more than that, by the mayor of Amarillo. We were having lunch, and she asked me. She said, "Well, what's your answer to the magic wand question?" And I didn't really know the question. She had said if I had a magic wand, and I told her, and I really believe that if we could create 500 new jobs a year that would keep young people in Lubbock. That's not just college graduates. That may be a South Plains College grad. That may be a high school grad, but generally focused on college graduates. We have 50,000 college students that live in Lubbock and Hockley County. If we could find if we could create 500 new good jobs a year, think about the impact that would have a decade, 2 decades down the road. To me, that's job one. And that's most of those jobs will be created from businesses that already exist in Lubbock today. Sure, some of it will be from businesses that may want to come invest in Lubbock, may want to partner with Texas Tech, may want to partner with industry here and Texas Tech, much like we've seen in the cotton industry. But that would be first and foremost. I think it's quality. Maybe another item is quality of life issues. It's the arts. I think we're making big strides in that. It's the things we do outdoors. It's making sure that we've got the baseball fields and the soccer fields for our kids. That we've got the things that attract families to put down roots in our community. The public, I think we're down the road in a pretty good shape on transportation. We certainly have some streets that we'll have to address, but when you think about the loop, the new outer loop, Loop 88, Marcia Sharp Freeway, the interstate, I'd love to see Interstate 27 extended. We need to connect it to I-20. Connecting I-40 and I-20 with I-27 is huge for us, and we'll continue certainly to work on that. We're in a pretty good shape when it comes to water, but you don't ever quit working on water in a semi-arid part of the world. So we'll continue to work on more efficient ways to manage our water and to make sure that we're prepared for the long haul.
Loop 88 is an interesting one. When we were kind of having our pre-production meeting, I brought it up and no one had really heard about it.
Yeah.
It's just a larger loop, right? Sort of taking in the idea that as we grow, we need to have that same type of a base. Is that essentially what it is?
Yeah, so it will basically connect the Slayton Highway, just a little bit south of where 1585 enters the Slayton Highway, to shallow water.
Okay.
It'll be much more like Loop 289 was. It will not be built in one continuous, like we did Marcia Sharp Freeway. It'll be built in segments, 4 segments. We'll start directly south. That runs along 130th Street today, so that's where it'll run. And they started the first part of that. I think it's very positive for our community. There are some that feel like it's more urban sprawl, and it may be, but there's already houses there. So it's not like it will create more development. I think it makes our community more attractive to investment in our community. But they had a public hearing actually just last night about the routing of the next couple phases, but follow that closely. But it's interesting. The city's role in that and the county both are in that for $7.5 million. That's our cost, and then the state pays for the rest. We pay for it, but it comes to TxDOT. TxDOT pays for it. It's the state pays for it, but certainly there's funded by our tax dollars.
Maybe a double marathon around the large.
I don't know about that. But, I'm still recovering from the half marathon myself, so we'll see. That's a great idea. You're the first one to suggest that.
Yeah, no, I think that'd be a lot of fun. Maybe that's when I'll actually join up when we have the big double marathon. I don't think my legs are built for it.
We're not going to give you a pass.
Not on that one. Okay.
Yeah, we'll expect to see you next April.
All right.
Yeah.
Mayor Pope, thank you so much for being here.
It's great to be here.
For more information and other episodes of The Sit Down, go to kttz.org. Thank you. Thanks.
Appreciate it.